So today we are auditing the explosion of GLP-1 weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. We're unpacking the science of muscle loss and contrasting that with a very different data-backed approach to staying strong as you age.
So our mission today is to look beyond the pharmaceutical marketing. We want to know, do these treatments actually support your independence, or do they quietly undermine the foundation you need to stay vibrant?
That is the perfect way to frame it. To start this audit, we have to look at the asset column first. What is the actual measurable benefit?
Okay, let's start with the good news.
Right. I want to pull up some fascinating data analyzed by Dr. Peter Attia regarding the SELECT trial. Now, for a long time, myself and many of my colleagues operated on Occam's razor.
That's the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the right one.
Exactly. So when we saw that drugs like semaglutide, which is the active ingredient in these injections, were reducing cardiovascular issues, the medical community collectively shrugged and said, well, obviously.
Because they were losing weight.
Right. If you lose 30 pounds of fat, your heart just doesn't have to work as hard. We assumed the benefit was entirely downstream of the weight loss. Less mass equals less stress on the pump.
Which makes intuitive sense. You drop the heavy baggage, the engine runs smoother. Cause and effect.
That's what we thought.
So did the SELECT study prove that wrong?
It complicated it significantly. The new analysis threw us a massive curveball. It showed that semaglutide reduced MEE, that stands for major adverse cardiovascular events like heart attack or stroke, by 20%.
20% is huge.
It is a massive number in the medical world. But, and here's the twist, this benefit appears to be partially independent of the weight loss.
Wait, hold on. You're saying someone could take the injection, not lose a single pound, and still see their risk of a heart attack drop?
Precisely. You could have a patient who didn't drop a dress size, but their internal risk profile changed dramatically.
How is that even possible?
The data suggests that waist circumference reduction was a better predictor of heart health than the actual number on the scale. This implies the drug is working on a deeper mechanism. It's likely reducing systemic inflammation or targeting visceral fat specifically.
Can we pause on visceral fat for a second?
Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of us just think fat is fat.
Right.
What makes that specific type so dangerous that targeting it literally saves your heart?
Great question. So subcutaneous fat is the stuff you can pinch. It sits right under the skin. It's annoying to most people, but it's relatively inert.
Okay.
Visceral fat is the fat stored deep inside the belly. It wraps around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines.
The deep fat.
Yes. And it is metabolically active tissue. It is literally pumping out inflammatory cytokines, which are basically distress signals 24/7.
So your body is constantly in a state of alarm.
Exactly. So if this drug is quieting that specific visceral fat or reducing the inflammation it causes, that explains why the heart gets better even if the total body weight doesn't move much.
That is a crucial distinction. It suggests the body is responding to a chemical signal, a shift in its internal environment, rather than just the mechanics of being lighter.
It does. And that is the asset. It's a powerful tool for heart health. But as an auditor, I cannot look at assets without looking at the liabilities.
And here is where we look at what is being traded away.
Right. This is where I have to sound the alarm, echoing some severe concerns from Dr. Mark Hyman. He warns that in biology, there is no free lunch.
Never.
And for anyone over 50, the price of this drug might be the very thing keeping you mobile.
You're talking about muscle.
I am. And the numbers are staggering. Dr. Hyman highlights data suggesting that up to 40, potentially even 50% of the weight lost on these drugs is actually lean muscle mass.
50%.
Up to 50%, yes.
Let's put that in real terms for everyone listening. If I lose 20 pounds on this drug, 10 of those pounds could be the actual muscle fiber I use to carry my groceries or walk up the stairs.
Correct. And for a senior, that is a catastrophic trade. We have a clinical term for the loss of muscle. It's called sarcopenia. Muscle isn't just about aesthetics or looking toned. Muscle is your metabolic engine. It is the primary organ where you dispose of blood sugar.
So it's a sink for the sugar.
Exactly. If you strip away that engine just to get a lower number on the scale, you end up with a condition we call skinny fat. You look smaller, but you are metabolically frailer.
It sounds like stripping the copper wiring out of a house just to pay for a new coat of paint on the outside. The house looks great from the street, but the electricity doesn't work anymore.
That is a disturbingly accurate analogy. If you stop the drug, and remember, these are often pitched as lifetime prescriptions, the weight almost always comes back.
But it doesn't come back as muscle, does it?
No, it comes back as fat. So you end up with a worse body composition than when you started. You have effectively aged yourself metabolically. You might look thinner, but your engine is drastically smaller.
That is terrifying. You're essentially accelerating the aging process in exchange for thinness. And look, independence is everything in my culture.
It's the ultimate goal of geriatrics, too.
The goal isn't just to not be a burden. The goal is to be useful to the family and the community until the very end. You can't do that without muscle.
You really can't.
Right.
And we haven't even touched on the acute side effects Dr. Hyman flags. We are seeing data showing a 900% increase in pancreatitis.
900?
Yes, a 400% increase in bowel obstruction. We are seeing cases of gastroparesis, which is literal stomach paralysis.
Stomach paralysis? That sounds incredibly painful.
It is. The drug works by slowing down the gut so you feel full.
Yeah.
But in some cases, it slows it down so much it stops moving entirely. Food just sits there and rots.
Wow.
Hyman actually calls these drugs a pharmacological straitjacket. They force the appetite down, they force the gut to freeze, but they don't teach the body how to actually be healthy.
A straitjacket. That is such a visceral image. It's the exact opposite of flow. It's the opposite of that natural rhythm I mentioned earlier. It is pure force, and force usually breaks things.
It is force.
However,
there is. And this is where a deep dive requires nuance. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. There is a counter-argument to the straitjacket theory that reframes how we might use these molecules.
Before we get into that nuanced view, I want to take a quick beat. We are throwing a lot at you today. Heart risks, muscle loss, stomach paralysis. It's heavy stuff. If this ancestral approach resonates with you, please join our community by subscribing. We are here to walk this path with you, slowly and safely. You don't have to figure this out alone.
Absolutely. We want you to be the most informed person in your doctor's office. Now let's look at that other perspective. I want to introduce you to the work of Dr. Tyna Moore.
Okay, what does she say?
She reminds us that GLP-1, which is the hormone these drugs mimic, isn't some alien chemical. It is a peptide our bodies produce naturally.
So the substance itself isn't the enemy, it's already inside us.
Exactly. When you eat, your gut makes GLP-1 to tell your brain you're full and to manage your insulin. The poison, or the cure, is in the dose.
The dose makes the poison.
Always. Dr. Moore distinguishes between the macrodosing approach, which is the current pharmaceutical standard, the sledgehammer that crushes your appetite and melts muscle, versus a microdosing approach.
Microdosing. How does it apply to weight loss peptides?
Her theory, and we are seeing clinical anecdotes to support this, is that tiny doses fractions of what is prescribed for weight loss might actually be regenerative.
Regenerative how?
She notes that at these very low levels, GLP-1 agonists can reduce neuroinflammation, that's inflammation in the brain, and really help with autoimmune pain.
So instead of shouting at the body to stop eating, it's whispering to the body to heal.
That's it. It acts as a gentle signal, a nudge. It might help your sensitivity to insulin without paralyzing the stomach.
I love that distinction, the whisper versus the shout. In nature, subtle shifts often create the strongest roots. A gentle rain soaks into the soil and feeds the plants, while a sudden flood just runs off and destroys the topsoil.
That's a beautiful way to picture it.
It seems Dr. Moore is suggesting we use this molecule to support the body's natural desire for balance, rather than silencing its hunger with that straitjacket.
Precisely. It is about using the science to assist the physiology, not overwhelm it. But even if we accept that microdosing has potential, we still have to address the elephant in the room.
The muscle.
Yes. We cannot rely on a peptide to build our physical strength. You cannot inject muscle. You need a foundation.
And that brings us home, literally for me. If the great danger of modern weight loss is sarcopenia, that poverty of the flesh, then we must look at the ancestral antidote.
Let's look at the data on that.
I want to take us to the JS Star and Kashiwa studies coming out of Japan. These aren't just your standard diet studies. They looked specifically at the connection between what we eat and physical frailty as we age.
These are excellent studies because they focus on functional outcomes. They didn't just look at blood tests, they look at whether people could actually still live independently.
Exactly. And the findings were crystal clear. Adherence to a traditional Japanese diet, what we call washoku, was inversely correlated with muscle weakness.
Meaning the closer they stuck to it, the stronger they stayed.
Yes. Those who ate this way were significantly less likely to suffer from sarcopenia. They kept their muscle. And the best part, it wasn't complicated. It wasn't about rare superfoods you have to order from the other side of the world.
Let's break that down for the listener. What exactly is washoku in this context? Because I think people hear Japanese diet and just think of eating sushi or bowls of white rice.
It's so much more than sushi. In fact, it's really about balance. The studies highlighted specific rooted foods, soybeans and tofu, fish, lots of vegetables, mushrooms, seaweed, and fermented pickles.
The foundational pillars.
It is a symphony of simple ingredients. It's having miso soup with breakfast, a small piece of grilled mackerel, a little side of spinach with sesame.
From a physiological standpoint, this makes perfect sense. The standard Western diet is what we call calorie-rich, but nutrient-poor.
Lots of energy, but no building blocks.
Right. It's high energy, but low information. The Japanese pattern is the exact opposite. It is dense with the specific nutrients that signal muscle maintenance.
The body knows what to do with it.
We see in the data that the Western dietary pattern showed absolutely no correlation to slowing biological aging. But the Japanese pattern, which is rich in plant proteins like soy and marine nutrients, specifically protects the neuromuscular system in adults over 50.
You mentioned biological aging just now. Can we clarify that? Because I think most of us just think of aging as how many candles are on the birthday cake.
Great point. We actually have two ages. Chronological age is the candles on the cake. You cannot change that. But biological age is the rate at which your cells are actually degrading.
How do you even measure that?
We measure this using something called epigenetic clocks. Specifically, we look at DNA methylation.
DNA methylation? That sounds intense. How should we visualize that?
Think of it like rust on a car. Two cars can be the exact same year, say 1970. One is rusted out in a scrapyard. The other is pristine and kept in a garage.
So they are the same chronological age, but vastly different biological ages.
Exactly. DNA methylation is basically the accumulation of that rust on your genetic code.
And this ancestral diet keeps the rust off.
According to the Waseda Health Study, yes. They found that a healthy Japanese dietary pattern was directly associated with slower biological aging.
That is incredible.
So, while an injection might shrink your waistline rapidly, this ancestral diet actively slows the ticking of the cellular clock.
That is the ultimate trade-off, isn't it? One approach offers a rapid change in size, potentially at the cost of your metabolic engine. The other offers a slower, sustained preservation of the entire system. It feels so much gentler.
It is the difference between renting your health and actually owning it. The traditional diet preserves the muscle integrity that keeps you independent. It keeps the engine running efficiently, rather than just starving the engine of fuel.
And that really leads us to the synthesis of this whole audit. Because we are not Luddites here. We are not saying you should never use modern medicine. We are simply saying never abandon your foundation.
Correct. We have to circle back to Dr. Hyman's root cause analysis. He argues, quite rightly, that obesity is largely an environmental problem.
It's what surrounds us.
We are swimming in a toxic soup of highly processed foods, sedentary behavior, and environmental stressors. Obesity is not an Ozempic deficiency.
I love that line. Obesity is not an Ozempic deficiency.
It's the absolute truth. We didn't suddenly run out of a pharmaceutical drug in the 1980s. Our environment changed.
The food supply changed.
Right. If you rely solely on a drug, even a very helpful one, without fixing the environment of your body, you are falling into a trap. You are treating the smoke and ignoring the fire.
And the fire is what we feed ourselves every single day. My practice, and what my Japanese ancestry has taught me, is to embrace the washoku approach, not as some strict, restrictive diet, but as a daily offering to the body.
An offering. That's a great mindset.
Instead of fearing food or trying to suppress the appetite with a sledgehammer, we can choose simple whole foods. A piece of grilled fish, a bowl of warm miso soup with tofu and seaweed. These are not just meals, they are muscle armor.
Muscle armor.
They are the very tools your body uses to rebuild itself every single day.
And that muscle armor is your ticket to independence. It's what keeps you out of the nursing home. It is what keeps your metabolism firing, so you don't need a drug to artificially regulate your weight in the first place.
It is gentle, but it is undeniably powerful. It is the tortoise, not the hare. And I think we all know who wins that race in the end.
We are committed to your independence. Click that notification bell so you never miss an audit. We want you to have the full picture every time.
So where does this leave us today? We have looked at the clinical data, the terrifying reality of muscle loss, the potential nuance of microdosing, and the timeless strength of the ancestral diet.
For me, the clinical takeaway is clear. GLP-1 agonists have a scientific place. perhaps for specific cardiovascular conditions or in microdoses to lower neuroinflammation, as Dr. Moore suggests.
But they are not a cure-all.
They are not a replacement for the metabolic foundation of muscle. You cannot inject vitality, you have to build it, meal by meal, movement by movement.
And I would add that your heritage and the simple choices you make in your kitchen are powerful medicine. The goal is not just to be thin. The goal is to be strong, to be rooted like an old tree that can weather any storm. We want you to trust your body's rhythm.
Trust the rhythm, but verify the science. But before we go, I want to leave you with a thought that builds on everything we've discussed.
Oh, I'm ready for this.
If these peptides effectively quiet the noise in the brain about food, if they completely mute the urge to eat, what emotional voids are suddenly left echoing in that silence?
Oh, wow.
Because once the urge to eat is numbed by a chemical, you might just have to face whatever trauma or stress you were trying to feed all those years. Are we actually ready for that silence?
That is a profound question to sit with. A whole different kind of weight. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure to unpack this with you.
Stay vibrant.
Stay vibrant.